Brian Daboll is gone after 4 seasons with the Giants. Let's talk about it. So it was only a matter of time. Brian Daboll is the first coach fired in the 2025 season after the Giants blew 2 separate 10-point leads to the Chicago Bears on Sunday. It is Monday as we're recording this, so yesterday this happened. The Giants have not had the season they thought they would have after they turned to Jaxson Dart at quarterback, and Brian Daboll is a huge reason why. But let's go back a little bit. I thought that Brian Daboll should have been fired following the 2024 season, but here we are. It made all the sense in the world. I often ascribe to the theory that Mike Greenberg talks about all the time, and he talked about it this morning when talking about Brian Daboll, even though the news hadn't come out yet about the firing. He said, you don't have a lame duck coach. You don't keep them around when you're bringing in a new regime, when you're bringing in a new quarterback, because that's just going to be confusing. We've seen that multiple times with Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, and now Jaxson Dart. We've seen it as probably a huge reason why a lot of guys who are doing really, really well in the past couple of seasons, Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, Mac Jones, the reason why they are suddenly becoming reclamation projects is because they were on teams with coaches. They were either with coaches who were lame duck coaches and didn't know how to coach, or they were with organizations that had no idea how to develop players because they're so worried about frequently getting the coaching position right. And when it comes to Brian Daboll, I'll admit that there was a part of me after the season where I was like, he should probably be fired, but he did make the playoffs in his first season. He did win Coach of the Year. He did do all this stuff. But let's remember, in his first season, the season where he won Coach of the Year, he was only 9-7-1. They weren't 12-5. They didn't win the division. In fact, they finished third. But they managed to make it to playoffs as a wild card team. Daniel Jones was still a Giant. Saquon Barkley was still a Giant. Let's remember, in that 2022 season, Daniel Jones played really well. And as I mentioned in the video about the Indianapolis Colts, sometimes it's not the quarterback. We're so quick to hate on Daniel Jones for his career record, but guess what? For 4 years, Brian Daboll had the exact same record. And now Daniel Jones has moved on, Saquon Barkley has moved on, both are thriving, and now Brian Daboll is out of a job after the Giants struggle to open the season despite quarterback changes. We know Jaxson Dart is dynamic. We know Cam Skattebo before his season-ending injury was dynamic. We can see now that Daniel Jones can play football. The reason all those players underperformed, Skattebo's was an injury, more on that in a second. The reason those players didn't live up to expectation may not have been, we know now, because of them. It was because of coaching and roster management and front office. Brian Daboll was credited with Josh Allen. That's how he got the Giants job, was the work he did with Josh Allen when he was in Buffalo. And yet Josh Allen won an MVP the same year that Brian Daboll went 3-14 with the Giants. Josh Allen is consistently in or around the AFC Championship game. Brian Daboll hasn't made the playoffs in 3 seasons. So, yes, he may have had a lot to do with it, but there are a lot of coaches who are better coordinators or quarterback coaches than head coaches. Josh McDaniels comes to mind. Every time somebody gives him a head coaching job, it doesn't go over so well. Then he goes back to being the OC of the Patriots. All is well. I don't think Brian Daboll is a bad coach. I just think, one, he was put in a bad situation with the Giants. I don't think that organization is healthy. And two, it was his first head coaching job. There aren't a lot of guys who do great in their first head coaching job. But when you look at this, was destined to happen. When Jaxson Dart came in, Jaxson Dart proved to be electric. And yet, 6 weeks later, he is now being evaluated for a concussion for the 4th time in 6 weeks as a rookie. And there was a moment a few weeks ago when he went in to be evaluated for a concussion, and Brian Daboll was running along the sideline, sticking his head into the medical tent, screaming at the staff, "Will I have my quarterback or not?" And that wasn't a great look for a coach that was clearly on his way out. And football is not like baseball or soccer, where once a player is subbed out, he cannot come back in. You have Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston there who can take a couple of snaps while your rookie quarterback of the future, gets his head examined after yet another hard hit. He gets hit a lot in the backfield because of that offensive line. He gets hit a lot because Brian Daboll calls designed quarterback runs. So let him get examined. 4 concussion checks in 6 weeks. Yes, every young quarterback needs to learn you got to get down. You got to take less hits. But Brian Daboll doesn't have to call the quarterback runs. Doesn't have to put Jaxson Dart in positions to be in trouble. There were just as many signs that Brian Daboll was coaching desperately for his job that was clearly putting Jaxson Dart in danger. Brian Daboll cared more about if he had a job the following Sunday than if his quarterback was healthy. Or who knows if maybe Malik Neighbors was pushed too hard, or Cam Scadaboo. Now those players, who are 2 of the best players on your team, are out for the season. Abdul Carter has a chance to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Jaxson Dart has a chance to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. You have Malik Neighbors, an all-pro wide receiver, even though he's out with injury. And Cam Scadaboo, who is electric, especially when he's paired with Jaxson Dart. Their chemistry from the jump has been awesome. And yet, and I know injuries happen, and yet you have all this to work with. And was it Brian Burns leading the NFL in sacks, or has a chance to? And yet you're 2-8 on the season. I heard it said that this job is going to be extremely desirable now that Brian Daboll is out of the picture. Similarly to the way that Ben Johnson was kind of holding out hope. For 2 off seasons, he was the guy that a lot of teams were going after for their head coaching job. And he held out for the Chicago Bears. And now we're seeing, and somewhat ironically, that it was the Bears that ended Brian Daboll's head coaching career with the Giants. The Bears are on the up. The Bears are gaining momentum at the right time. They're 6-3. They've won 2 in a row. They put up 47 points a week ago and got a clutch win against the Bengals. It wasn't that they beat the Bengals that was the big thing, or even that they put up 47 points. It was the way they won. They won at the last second. And Caleb Williams looked really good against the Giants. It was being able to work with Caleb Williams that attracted Ben Johnson to the job. And I'm sure having Rome Odunze and DJ Moore on that offense didn't hurt either. And it's going to be the same thing with the Giants. You're going to look at that roster when healthy, and you're going to see Cam Scadaboo and Abdul Carter and Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns and Jaxson Dart and a healthy Malik Neighbors and say, sign me up. And a division that, until this year, hadn't had a repeat champion for 20 years. And it looks like the Eagles all but have it locked up with how the rest of the division is playing. So this Giants job is going to be extremely attractive. And I'm sure there are many, many coaches who could do a lot with this job. And I've talked a lot about, as I mentioned earlier this week in a video, I've talked about sometimes it's not the quarterback. And we've talked about Daniel Jones. Look at Russell Wilson. And I know that Russell Wilson got benched in favor of Jaxson Dart. And I know that Russell Wilson's best days are behind him. And he's not exactly a starter in the NFL anymore. But in the last 3 seasons, Russell Wilson has been with 3 organizations and 3 head coaches. First, he was with the Broncos in Denver and Sean Payton. And yes, Denver is tied for the best record in the AFC, and for a brief 4-day window between the Thursday night game, which they won, and the Sunday morning game in Berlin, which featured the Indianapolis Colts, the Broncos had the 1 seed in the AFC. But in their last 5 weeks, the Broncos have played 2 of the ugliest games I've ever seen. They beat the Jets 13-11 in London. And then this last week on Thursday night, they beat the Raiders 10-7. And mind you, in that span, they also only beat the Giants by 1. And they beat the Texans without C.J. Stroud 18-15. So, yes, the Broncos have won, but they've won several games really up. And we know Sean Payton can coach, but I have certainly lost a little bit of respect for him in the last couple of weeks, the way he's talked about Russell Wilson. Why is he even still talking about Russell Wilson 2 years after he's coached him? And it was during that game to the Giants where Sean Payton got to the podium and completely unprovoked said, "Man, I wish they'd waited an extra week to start Jaxson Dart so that we could have played against Russell." He didn't say his name, but that's basically what he meant. Russell had thoughts about it, taking unnecessarily shots at a quarterback, and because Sean Payton was never a fan of Russell because he didn't pick him. And so that never worked for Russell. And then he goes to Pittsburgh under Mike Tomlin and actually has a pretty good season. And now New York, and he had a good first game. I think it was the first game that he played pretty well. And then he got benched a few weeks later. And I think, yes, Russell Wilson is not a starting quarterback in this league anymore. Yes, his best days are behind him, but the reason I bring him up is to say, of the last 3 seasons that he's played, the coach either didn't want him or didn't know how to develop a quarterback, didn't know how to use a quarterback, or in a dilapidated organization. Brian Daboll's out of a job after 4 years, and the Giants haven't proven they can be consistent winners, so that's not an organization ready to do anything. And like I just said, Denver didn't want him. Sean Payton didn't want him. When he goes with Mike Tomlin, an established veteran coach who knows how to win, obviously Week 10 Sunday night game against the Chargers was not a good example of that. But as we somehow end up saying every single year, Mike Tomlin has the Steelers at least in a position to fight for the playoffs at the end of the year. Always finishes above 500. Mike Tomlin is a professional football coach. And so of the last 3 years, that was the best situation for someone like Russell Wilson, and he had the best season. So you have to put a player in a good situation for them to succeed. Alex Smith's career was saved by Jim Harbaugh coming to San Francisco. Not that Mike Singletary wasn't a good coach, but he was a defensive guy. Jim Harbaugh's a quarterback. Comes in, saves the quarterback. Then that same quarterback goes to Andy Reid and is now like the most accurate quarterback in NFL history in terms of completion percentage. Sometimes it's the coach. Sometimes it's the coach. And especially now, I tend to agree with Mike Greenberg when he says don't bring a new quarterback in under a lame duck coach. We've seen it too many times just in the last couple of years. Don't think these new players, this new regime can save this coach. It shouldn't be the responsibility of a bunch of rookies to save a coach that hasn't gotten the job done. So I'm of the mind that Brian Daboll should have been gone a year ago. Thankfully, it happened now. And maybe they can get somebody in there that can help these young players grow into what they need to be. Nothing comes to mind immediately, but I've been thinking a lot, especially this morning, about I think Rex Ryan should get another shot at being a head coach just because he amuses me. Rex Ryan is a defensive guy, but they got a pretty good defense if coached correctly. I don't know anybody else off the top of my head. At this point, I don't think Josh McDaniels would ever leave New England again, and I don't think he should be a head coach. I don't know anybody off the top of my head. Let me know in the comments who you think the Giants should target as their next head coach. But for now, I think it's a good thing that Brian Daboll's out of the building. I think just the visual of him at the medical tent yelling and screaming, "Where is my quarterback?" give him a couple plays. No one had high expectations for you or the Giants this season anyway. Better you take care of him in the long term. It'll look better on you as a whole. And now you're out of a job. I definitely think he will get another job as an offensive coordinator somewhere. I think he's good at that. But, I mean, we've put all of the Giants' struggles for the last couple of years on Daniel Jones. And maybe there was some blame to go on there, but he's thriving in Indianapolis. This is more organizational dysfunction. Brian Daboll and the Giants' ownership front office. And now they're starting over again. Another rookie quarterback seeing a coaching change. We got to stop that. That's all I have on this one for Empire Sports Talk. I am your host, Roman Gennaro. As I said, let me know in the comments who you think the Giants should target as their next head coach. I'll see you on the next one.